To find the origins of the Lone Ranger, you have to go back in time.
Radio Indiana, WIBC, Indianapolis.
No, a little bit further than that. Oh, much farther than that.
The answer is 1070 WIBC.
Now, come on. Go way, way back.
A fiery horse for the speed of light, a cloud of dust, and a hearty hi-yo Silver, the Lone Ranger.
That broadcast would have been Halloween 1938, one day after WIBC, then AM, went on the air. The Lone Ranger first appeared more than 5 years prior to that, January 31st, 1933, on WXYZ radio in Detroit. That's right. Unlike many movies which came from a novel, maybe a play on Broadway, The Lone Ranger was born on radio, created by WXYZ owner George Trendle. Well, the idea may have come from one of his writers, Franz Stryker, when Mr. Stryker worked at a station in Buffalo a few years earlier. But Trendle owned the show, so of course he got the credit.
They were trying to make their mark as an independent station. They had broken from their network affiliation, and the thing is, they needed something to compete directly with the more famous fare. In some ways, the Lone Ranger was like created by a business need, by creative community, but it worked because it got the essence of what makes a hero.
Wally Podrazik is curator of the Museum of Broadcast Communications, home of the Radio Hall of Fame in Chicago. The Lone Ranger worked not only with kids, for whom it was designed, but grown-ups, because he was a different kind of hero.
Someone who had a very distinct personality in the sense of he was a Western hero that didn't necessarily rely on his guns. He didn't kill characters, and he was truly a champion of the good.
The Lone Ranger was so popular on WXYZ, the show helped create the fourth of the four big networks during radio's golden era, as the Mutual Broadcasting System came along to challenge CBS and the two NBC networks, Red and Blue.
Because in effect it became the core that started the Mutual network.
That's true.
It was basically the marquee name for convincing stations to join that network.
WIBC would join the Mutual network after we hit the air in 1938. When you think of the Lone Ranger, what is the first thing that comes to mind? Poor William Tell. Nobody knows who he is anymore, because his overture was stolen by that masked man from the very beginning of the radio show up until now. Now, a lot of folks think of the TV show, which ran from 1949 to 1957. They think of Clayton Moore as the man with the black mask and the white hat. Armie Hammer is now that man. He's the Lone Ranger in the movie. Outlasting them all, though, were the two main actors who put the mask on, even though the listener couldn't see them. Brace Beamer, starting in 1941, and for much of the first 8 years of the show, Earl Grazer, who, as Podrazik tells us, was tragically killed in a car crash as he was on his way to the studio to do the show.
That's where an example of the character supersedes the performer, in that it was such a strong, identifiable character that someone can come in, even under a tragic situation like that, and be accepted by the listening public.
Amazingly enough,
His Indian companion Tonto,
now made famous in the movie by Johnny Depp, was, with the exception of a handful of episodes, played by one man, John Todd, for the show's entire 21-year radio run.
Look, Kimasabi, wagons coming this way.
Maybe you'll go see Lone Ranger the movie, but judging by what some of the critics are saying about the film, you might be better off jumping online and finding a few of the 2,956 episodes of The Lone Ranger in our favorite medium, the radio.
Yes, he's got go power. There he goes. He's feeling his Cheerios.
Brought to you indeed by General Mills. Don't forget to check that box of Cheerios for your Lone Ranger 6-shooting ring, Abdul.